Not too long ago, I got a massive camera upgrade. I went from the GoPro Hero 7 to the DJI Osmo Action 3. I'm not sponsored by DJI, I just preferred how this camera looked compared to the competitors like GoPro and Insta360. I'm no camera expert, but I have had this little thing long enough where I feel comfortable sharing some of my settings.
Yes, go! Nice!
I shoot in 4K resolution with a 16:9 aspect ratio. Frame rate is 30 FPS. I will admit this camera is not as good as Insta360 with using the same footage for vertical and horizontal content, which is basically YouTube videos versus shorts, Instagram reels, and the TikToks. However, it still has a wider field of view than GoPro, and I think it does the job just fine, especially since my main focus of content is on the long-form YouTube videos. I use Rocksteady stabilization. This works great, and I've never felt the need to try Rocksteady Plus.
Oh my gosh, that was so fun.
Now to the meat of the settings. I use Pro Mode exclusively. Starting with the exposure settings, it's minus 0.7 EV comp. Shutter speed is 1/200 to 1/8000. ISO is 100 to 6400. Okay, here's where a non-camera guy is going to explain why I chose these settings. So take this with a grain of salt, and if I'm totally wrong, please let me know. My goal is to have as much usable footage as I can. Usable footage to me means it doesn't give me a headache. Shaky footage is headache central, okay? Mountain biking has some of the harshest light conditions around, so it's pretty tough to nail this goal every time. This is because if I'm filming in a dark forest, then you might think to raise the ISO and lower the shutter speed so more light can come into the lens. The issue with this philosophy is we're mountain biking. We're flying down the trails. The higher the ISO and lower the shutter speed, the more shaky the footage becomes. So finding the balance between these is tough, and I've discovered that I'd rather have footage that is very dark but stable so I can try to resurrect it in post-production. If I have footage I can see but it's so shaky, then no amount of post-production finesse will salvage it. Here's the same section of forest, but with my preferred settings like I mentioned. Notice how it's a lot darker, but the shakiness is substantially decreased. I also did not do anything to bring up the light levels. All I did was change the saturation. Additionally, I'm not one to mess with settings each ride, so these are what I've landed on that work for the most part. Alright, let's keep going. White balance is set to manual and stays at 5500 K. I think K means Kelvin, but again, not a camera guy, so let me know if I'm wrong. Color is DC-like, not sure what the C stands for, but I do know that this means it's 10-bit. It looks a little bit flat on camera compared to the quote-unquote normal, but the 10-bit color allows for a lot more color grading in post-production. Basically, I just crank the saturation up however much I like it, and I can change some of the hues, again, to try and match the forest.
Nice!
And then FOV, which stands for field of view, is set predominantly to ultra wide unless I'm trying to get a little bit more personable and talk to, you people in front of the camera, then I'll change it to a wide angle lens or the normal. Okay, moving on to the sound settings. They're pretty straightforward. Channel is stereo, wind noise is off, and directional audio is off. To help with the wind reduction, I use those little mustache things over the two mics at the bottom, which do pretty good. I've crashed a plethora of times with this camera, and those mustache things rarely come off with the two-sided tape that comes with them, so honestly, I'm pretty impressed with it.
Wow. That was a bad one.
And I guess the final thing when it comes to my camera setup is I do mount it to my full face chin bar. So I will always wear my full face, even if I don't really want to, if I'm doing some easier trails, because I found that I just prefer the chin mount footage over things like the chest mount. So I promise you, I feed her like 5 different times a day. She's like a kid trying to reach their hand up in one of those claw machines to try and like yoink a toy without actually paying for it. That's her. I'm super stoked for next week's video. It talks about what I think is the best quiver of bikes for the Pacific Northwest. Hit that subscribe button and the little bell to get notified when this video drops. You definitely do not want to miss it. Don't forget, the most important trail of the day is the next one, and I will see you in the next video. Later.